Hey everyone, I have a Ridgid R4512 table saw. You can see it right here. It's a really kind of cheap entry-level table saw you can get from Home Depot. It's maybe $500 or $600. The good thing about it is the top is made out of solid cast iron, which makes it really stable. It's been good to me, but recently I've noticed I've not been getting the cuts that I'm looking for, and I haven't been getting the accuracy, and I've noticed some wood burning. As I've dug into it, I found out that my table saw blade and my fence weren't tuned parallel to the miter slots. I just got it out of the box 5 or 6 years ago and just started working with it, and I never even thought to try to tune it up. Honestly, this has been daunting. I've been putting this off for months because I've not been looking forward to figuring out how to do this and making all these micro adjustments. I was afraid I'd mess things up worse. So I did a lot of researching, watched a lot of videos on YouTube, and I finally decided to go for it. And so I spent a lot of time and I got everything within 1/1000th of an inch. And then I made a massive, big mistake that ruined all the work that I had done. And so I want to share the process that I learned to do with you, and also I want to offer you a way to avoid the mistake I made. Specifically, if you have a zero clearance insert, a table saw sled, or a kind of a miter sled where you can make picture frames on it, please watch this before you attempt to move your blade, because if you have any of those things, if you go to adjust your blade, it's going to affect those items. And so I made a huge mistake after getting everything within to 1/1000th. And I hope you can learn from my mistakes. Hope this video helps you. Let's jump into it. Having your table saw blade squared to your miter slots and ultimately your fence is really important in getting clean work and accurate work. Especially if you have a zero clearance insert like I have, it's really best to make the insert after you tune your table saw, which I didn't do. I didn't really think about that. Here's a shop-made jig I made, which was pretty much a failure. It just wobbled too much. No matter what I did, I could not get a clean, stable reference. So I broke down and bought a Woodpeckers Saw Gauge. It was a lot of money. They definitely are winning here, but it's a brilliant design. It works off these two pins that self-center a larger pin. No matter where you're sliding, that pin is always centered, and it just works. It's stable, it's flat, it's solid. It's worth the money for setting up your tools. When you're measuring, you want to make sure you're always referencing the same part of this table saw blade. So I made a little mark with a Sharpie, and after I zeroed it out, I was shocked to find that I was 22 thousandths off. I thought I'd be a few thousandths. I was really off. I used a 4mm Allen wrench to take off the back panel, and I cleaned up some of the sawdust while I was in there. And then I grabbed an 8mm hex key and began to gently loosen the 4 bolts. There's 2 in the front, 2 in the back, that hold up I think it's called a trunnion system. I hope I'm saying that right. And at first I did about half turn, 3/4 of a turn for each of these, and relied on the mallet. And I eventually loosened all 4 of them pretty heavily to get them to move a lot easier. I checked the blade, which distance I needed to move it. In my case, the back of the blade, what needed to go, in towards the arbor, 22 thousandths of an inch to be centered. So I would just check both parts of it and go back and forth, making sure I was getting accurate readings. I'd do that maybe about 3 times, and then I would tap some more with the mallet, very lightly, not very heavily. Ultimately, that method got me close. It got me to, I think, 9/1000ths of an inch, and I was wanting to get under 1/1000th, and so I used I noticed that when I would tighten the bolts, it would go out of square even more. So I used a 2x6 scrap and a screwdriver to hold some leverage against the setup while I tightened, and I would leverage it past 0, so that when I tightened the bolts, it would kind of self-correct a few thousandths back. And that seemed to work out really well, and I got within 1/1000th of an inch. I mean, under 1/1000th, like half 1/1000th. I was really happy with this, and I thought I had won the day. I was celebrating. I was so happy. Look at that. Here I am blissfully and ignorantly tightening all of the bolts back, and I was very careful to check to make sure that as I was tightening I wasn't ruining things, and I would go and check for squareness after every bolt. And I would do the tire method where you do like that star pattern, you go cross and you do a little bit at a time. And here's where I figured out I made a mistake. In all of my pushing and pulling and using the screwdriver for leverage, I moved the blade so far out that my insert no longer fit. I didn't realize you could really move the whole setup that far. I thought about just making a new insert, but then I realized I have a table saw sled and a picture frame sled, and I didn't want to remake 3 accessories for this table saw, and so I am here begrudgingly loosening all of the bolts and undoing all of the work that I had done. And here I am starting over with the insert in. I don't really know why I took the insert out to do this. I saw on a lot of videos that people had taken the insert out, so I just went with that. But if I were you, if you can, leave your insert in while you're doing this to make sure you don't make the same mistake I did. And so here I am starting all over again. This time it went way faster because I was confident with this saw gauge from Woodpeckers, and I was confident in everything that I was doing, so I was able to go way faster. Here I am checking again, and I'm back to 22 thousandths of an inch out of square, which is where I started, so it's good. And I'm holding down the insert to make sure that it stays, and I'm gently tapping and moving things back and forth, checking after every 10 or 15 seconds of work. Eventually, after doing this process again, I got within 9 thousandths of an inch, and this was as good as I could get while keeping my insert and my table saw sled and my picture frame sled in working order. It was a little frustrating because I was glad I was able to get the saw to under 1/1000th, but because of where the positioning of the blade is, there wasn't a way to move everything over enough to get it back to 0. So I'm pretty disappointed, but I will accept that my other 3 accessories are still in working order, and when I'm using the table saw without them, just like ripping material, I'm not as bad as 22 thousandths out. I'm down to 9, which is acceptable, I guess, although I was hoping I could get to 0. Hope this helped. Please like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments below if you've had the same problem and if you like this Woodpecker Saw Gauge. Peace.